kind of trickle in. Welcome to your third FYE seminar. Good afternoon. I'm glad you all could attend this afternoon, and I think you'll find today's session especially beneficial. My name is Rachel Lloyd, and I served on the planning committee for FYE and some of the changes that came about this year, including these seminar sessions. And today we have a special guest presenter here with us from Stillwater. And he is going to share some tips with you related to professional development in general and identifying a career path. So be sure to silence your cell phones and give him your full attention. Again, I think you're going to really reap the benefits of this presentation and continue to think about some of the things that he talks about. I also wanted to let you know that as you're aware, you weren't able to scan your cards for your attendance points as you came in today, but the scanners will be set up on your way out, and that is how you will get your attendance points. So be sure on your way out after the session is over to stop by the table here in the front lobby so that you can get your attendance points. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest presenter today. We have with us Mr. Justin Lacey. He is the Director of Human Resources Consulting Services, Equal Opportunity, and Title IX Coordinator at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma. In his role, he oversees all university recruitment, employee relations, compensation, legal compliance, and accommodations. Prior to coming to OSU, Justin worked at St. Louis University and the University of Missouri at St. Louis in both human resources and Title IX. Justin also spent 6 years working in human resources for Pinnacle Entertainment Incorporated, a national casino gaming and hotel company. Justin has a Juris Doctor, or a JD, from the St. Louis University School of Law, a Master's in Business Administration, or an MBA, from St. Louis University, and a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from Oklahoma State University. He is also a certified trainer of managing workplace conflict through the Mediation Training Institute International. Justin is also an adjunct professor at both St. Louis University and the University of Missouri at St. Louis, where he teaches online classes in human resources management, managing people and organizations, and labor relations and collective bargaining. So as you can hear, there's probably no one more accomplished or with more experience to deliver the message to you today that he is about to come forward and do. All right, I'll turn it over to Justin.
Thank you, Rachel, very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. There we go, there we go. So, middle of the afternoon, I know, but I promise I will try to make this as entertaining as I possibly can. So, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me today. I feel very honored to be here. This is, I think, the fourth time I've got to come to NEO, and the previous couple times have always been a great experience. So, again, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. So, again, I really have just one main goal here today, is to basically try to help you improve your chances of success. Again, a lot of the things I'm going to provide you are based on not only my own experience, but also based on some of the people that I've looked up to in my career, people who've really had an impact on me, and information that I've just kind of gathered since I came into the workforce, and even back when I was in college trying to figure out my major. So again, it is simply my perspective. I hope what I will provide you is valuable. It is some information that you can use, well, not only when you're trying to decide what your major is, but more importantly, when you get out into the working world, how to make sure you make a good impression and to get where you want to be. Because at the end of the day, that's what I want, is for you to get wherever you want to be. So, again, Rachel had a very nice introduction. Yes, I'm a lawyer, so if anybody has any good lawyer jokes, I'd be happy to hear them. They're probably all true. So, but yeah, I was a business major. I have my MBA. I hire people for a living. I fire people for a living. I investigate. I write legal briefs. I do anything related to the law, essentially. When I got to OSU, when I was a freshman, my major was pre-med. Yeah. I took that first intro to biology class and had to cut a frog open, and I about threw up in the lab. So anybody had that unfortunate experience? And then when I stumbled out, I stepped on the frog. So at that point, that was a major eye-opening experience, and maybe I'm not cut out to be a doctor. So if I'm squirmy with a frog, maybe you should try something else. So I did what every student does after I declared pre-med. I go in the exact opposite direction, and I was a history major. Enjoyed history. Liked history. Anybody seen a job ad for wanted historian? Specifically 16th century medieval England? No. No. So that didn't work out. So I switched over, so I'm like, you know what? OSU has a good business school. Let me try the business school. Switched over to there. Did accounting. Yeah, anybody had that first accounting class? God help you. I said, nope, can't do that. I changed my major 6 times before I ultimately ended on as a management major. And I consider myself very lucky to do what I love to do. So I start off by saying, if you're worried about your major, even if you know exactly what your major is, you're going to be okay. I absolutely promise you. So, 4 main topics we're going to talk about today. First off, we're going to talk about selecting a major. We're going to talk about your resume. And if you don't have a resume yet, it is perfectly okay. We're going to talk about that first interview, or what should you need to know when you go into an interview. And then finally, a kind of a hodgepodge of just other stuff that I found interesting that I'd like to share with you. Okay? So first off, let's talk about selecting a major, or more importantly, what happens if I can't select a major? Okay? Just by a show of hands, who in here has already declared their major? Good number of you. It's actually quite a bit. Who in here maybe has a major in mind but hasn't quite declared it yet? Okay? And who has no freaking idea what they want to do in life, except that I am at NEO right now and I'll figure it out while I'm here? Every single one of you who raised your hand, no matter which question you answer when you raise your hand, you're in a good spot. It may not seem like it. You may be stressed. Even if you know exactly where you're going, there's maybe some classes you don't want to take in your major. Or maybe you're just really anxious to get right into it. But most importantly, I'm going to help you try to discern what is the proper path that will make you happy in your life. So first off, do I major? Do I minor? Do I have a double major? Do I have a triple major? Do I have a major with a concentration? You hear all these different things about what you should personally do. So how do most students select a major? And again, this is not all students, but how do most students select a major? There's a couple of ways. First off, I want to study what I love. Makes sense to me. If it's something that you really, really love, wouldn't you want to make a career and a major out of that? Absolutely. Okay, what if your love is studying rabbits? What if your love is salsa dancing? What if your love is, collecting stamps? If you can find majors in those areas, that's great. But it doesn't always work out that way. Most students pick their major because, it's something I was interested in, something I've loved for a long time. That's why I picked it. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. How about my parents always said, do what makes you happy? Any of your parents ever said that? Well, this is one of those few instances where my dad told me when I was young that I would be a lawyer someday, and it's one of the times I really regret having to say he's right. Still makes me sad every time I have to admit that my dad was right when it comes to that. But a lot of people say, my parents said I'd be a good doctor. My parents say I'd be a good lawyer. My parents say I should be a teacher. So, because you have that information from your family, that's how you pick your major. A lot of people are like that. Okay, what about everyone has always told me I would make a good fill in the blank? Anybody ever told you that? Hey, you're really good with people. You'd be a great teacher. Hey, you're really good with numbers. You'd be a great accountant or a great math teacher. Very, very common way for people to select their major. Peer pressure. Everybody, I don't know what I want to do, but everybody else sees something that I don't see, so maybe that's how I'll select my major. Very common. How about this? Everyone in my family has always been a blank. One of my college roommates, he was an engineering major. His great-great-grandfather and everybody after him was an engineer. So he came into OSU as an engineering major because everyone in his family did it. He felt like he'd be letting his family down if he didn't do it. All of these are kind of ways most students select their major, okay? Does anybody, you don't have to raise your hands, but do you find yourself maybe in any one of these categories? See a lot of people are shaking their head, yes. It just means you're normal. That's all it means, is that you're like most students. But even if you fit into one of these categories, does that mean this is what you should select as what you want to study? I always tell people, because one thing that I hear a lot of in my office, because I've done a lot of career development in my career, is I want to study what I love. I only get one shot at college, so I want to study something that makes me happy. Anybody had to take calculus? Did that just make you happy? Better than trig, okay. I couldn't stand math. Math was my downfall. I was horrible at math. Problem was, I actually did really well in it. I just didn't understand it. So I had so many people tell me, hey, you've done really well at math. Why don't you make math a career? I said, heck no. But a lot of people select their majors because it's what they are passionate about. It's what I've always wanted to do since I was a little kid. How many student athletes do we have in the crowd? Correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't you love to be paid to play your sport? And why? Most athletics provide lucrative careers. Not a lot of people can do it. And you can really set yourself up for life. So being a professional athlete would sound like something that you're passionate about, which is great. I'm not telling you to not follow your passion. All I am saying is, when you're selecting a major, just be cautious about it being something you're absolutely passionate about. And let me explain why. First off, paying back the debt can be burdensome. I had a good friend who was a fire protection major. 5-year program in Stillwater. He had been around, his dad was a firefighter, his grandfather was a firefighter. He was passionate about it his whole life. Got to OSU, did really well in the fire protection major, got to be a senior, and he goes, you know what? I'm passionate about being a firefighter and the concept of that, but I have not enjoyed my major. Because I feel like I've been doing this my whole life, and I felt like I haven't learned anything new. It's stuff that I'm passionate about, so I already know about it. I'm not gaining more knowledge than what I hope to achieve. Okay? College is expensive. College is very, very expensive. So whatever you decide to major in, make sure it is something that you enjoy and that you're going to get value after the fact. And we'll talk about a little bit that more here in a second. But paying back debt can be very burdensome if you pick something that may not pan out. For example, I've got a really good friend who was a dance major in college. Private school in New Jersey. I think it was like $65,000 a year she paid to go to school, times 4 years. Graduated with a theater arts major, emphasis in dance. So she's over $200,000 in debt when she graduates. How hard is it to find a job as a professional dancer? Very hard, very competitive field. So she followed her passion, which was great, but now what does she do with her degree? She couldn't find a job. She still lives in New Jersey today, and she's a Starbucks manager. And she goes to New York City whenever she can to try to get auditions. She would be the first person to tell you, I followed my passion, but here's one of the dangers of following your passion. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm not telling you not to follow your passion. I'm just simply making sure you learn the benefits of doing so. Second of all, most passions don't lend themselves to careers. You know, if you're passionate about, raising rabbits, there's not a lot of places that pay you to raise rabbits. If you're passionate, about building Legos, just making that up, I've never seen a job ad that says we will pay you to build Legos. So again, your major should be something that you're interested in. Just be cautious about it being a passion, because most passions don't lend themselves to actual paying careers. Okay? Doing what you love can wreck your love affair with it. So I was just telling Rachel, when I was born, my second ever baby picture was in an OSU shirt. Both my parents are alums. My brother's an alum. I'm an alum. My grandma's an alum. It's been part of who I am my whole life. And now that I work at OSU, I see things on a different perspective. I see things that the public doesn't see. So it used to be when I think of OSU, I would think of football and think of sports and think of everything that I loved about the university. And now that I'm an employee, I see things slightly different. You ever heard the saying, you don't ever want to meet your heroes because you come to find out they're actually real people? Kind of the same thing that I've experienced. I still love my job. I'm very, very lucky to do what I love. But again, seeing things from a different perspective can kind of change your passion a little bit. So again, doing what you love could potentially wreck your love affair with it. And finally, you end up spending money on unhelpful majors. Again, one subject that I always tell everybody you should take one class in is philosophy. And the reason why I say that is it will teach you how to think differently. And actually, even thinking back to my freshman year at OSU, when I took my one philosophy class, I still remember stuff from that class that I use in my daily life. It teaches you how to think differently. But again, I thought it was an amazing class and I loved it. But again, a philosophy major can do what? Exactly. It's just one of those majors that there's not a lot of in demand for philosophers out in the world. That you get paid to sit in a room by yourself and think. So again, find something that interests you. Just be careful of your passion. Okay? 4 things to consider. Again, this is based on my experience and what I've talked to others and different things like this that I've attended. These, to me, are the 4 most important things to consider when you're trying to figure out what to major in. First off, earning potential. You know what? Money matters. To an extent. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But ultimately, you all want to graduate and get good paying jobs. I've never met anybody who said, I want to graduate just to have the degree and then do nothing the rest of my life. You go to school to earn money, to get a degree to earn money. So depending on how important money is to you, your major can reflect that. Again, if you're an accounting major, just for pure example, there is a lot of earning potential in accounting majors. Philosophy majors, much less earning potential. Now, when I was in law school, I had a lot of friends who were philosophy majors, and they went to law school because they didn't know what else to do with their philosophy degree. So they were hoping that law school would provide that answer for them. And you know what I found? Most of them didn't want to be lawyers. They just thought, I don't know what to do with my major, so I'm just going to keep staying in school and hopefully I'll figure it out. And so they spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars doing something they may not want to do ultimately. So again, whatever major you decide, make sure it is a major that there is money and earning potential for you. Money is important to an extent. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. Second, when selecting a major, I say professional feedback. I would highly caution anybody to select a major before you have talked to at least 3 people who do that for a living. So let's say you decide you want to be a biology major. Great major. Have you talked to anybody who is a biologist or a doctor or who uses their biology degree? That is my challenge to you. Whatever your major is, talk to at least 3 people who do that for a living and make sure you understand the pros and cons. When I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to go to law school, I talked to a lot of lawyers. You know what they all told me? You can make a lot of money. You're going to work 70 to 90 hours a week. 6, maybe 7 days a week. It's a lot of time. And if you want to have a family, if you want to travel, if you want to have free time to do whatever, that takes up a lot of time. Yeah, you can make a lot of money being a lawyer. You really can. But you know what? You're going to work for it. I wouldn't have had any idea that was the case had I not talked to those lawyers before I went to law school. They provided me information that they are not going to teach you in class. And that's what I want to emphasize. Your professors are all experts in their field. They're going to share all their knowledge with you. But as far as career advice, talk to somebody who's actually in that field. So if you want to be a teacher, talk to teachers about what teacher hours really mean. If you want to be a coach someday, I guarantee you coaches and teachers are two professions that spend more time out of class and off the field than anybody else because they have so much planning that goes into what they do, but we don't ever see it. So get that professional feedback. You will not be sorry, I promise you. ROI, the return on your investment. Think of selecting your major as a financial commitment. If you're going to pay NEO thousands and thousands of dollars, what are you getting out of it? In addition to that little piece of paper that you hang on your wall, what else are you getting out of being here? That should be really important for you. It is your life. You're the one who has to pay back this money eventually. You're the one who ultimately has to live with whatever you decide to do. So make sure whatever major you decide, you're going to get something out of it. And you're not doing it just because, I got nothing else better to do. And finally, financial incentives. And what I mean by that is a lot of different majors provide different value. For example, in Stillwater, one of the hardest majors that I've heard is chemical engineering. I can't even begin to imagine, my mind just doesn't work that way. I can't even begin to imagine how hard a major chemical engineering is. But I've also been told by those in that major that OSU offers a ton of scholarship money in that field because it is a field not a whole lot of people want to do. So for those who have that passion and that interest in it, there are rewards for it. So whatever your major is, what rewards are you going to get out of it? What's going to in it for you? This is one of those times it's okay to say, hey, what's in it for me? That is an absolutely valid question for you to ask when you're thinking about your major. What's in it for me? It's ultimately your life, and you have to live with whatever you decide on. So it absolutely should be about you specifically. Okay? Remember I told you that money is important, but money is not happiness? I think this graph pretty much sums that up. Forbes magazine did a study not too long ago about the happiest people, the happiest professions. Top occupations for job satisfaction. People that enjoyed what they did, were happy, who lived good lives, who earned money doing what they were good at and what they enjoyed. Take a look at this list. What do you notice? Clergy is number one. Do you ever know any clergy millionaires? Not many. What about millionaire firefighters? I can assure you, people don't become firefighters for the money. Special education teachers, painters, sculptors, psychologists. These aren't highly lucrative careers. But you know what? These people are happy. They will tell you that when they decided to major in these fields, it's something that they had an interest in, they could make a career out of it, and it's something they enjoyed doing. And frankly, by the time you leave here and you get out in the real world, if those are three things you can have, happiness, a little bit of money, and doing what you love, that to me is the definition of success. That's an absolute definition of success. So again, what you don't see on this list, doctors, lawyers, CEOs, highly lucrative professions, maybe not necessarily the happiest. And again, I know a lot of really happy lawyers. I know a lot of really happy doctors. I also know a lot of really unhappy lawyers, unhappy businessmen. I know unhappy teachers. So again, treat this just as a general idea. you might be completely different. Money is important, but money does not drive your happiness. I think this definitely proves that. Okay? So I want to show you real quickly a very, very short video kind of about the wrong way to pick a college major by our friend, it's kind of hard to read, Dr. Fred Lindbred. He is kind of a nationwide expert in helping students select their major. So real quickly, let me show you this video real quick, and he'll kind of share with you what his experience is on selecting that major. Give us 1 second. Hey Rachel, you have to click off this and click on that. Yeah, here, go ahead and minimize that, or minimize the PowerPoint. Okay. And then. Click on that. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, now it's coming. There it goes.
Okay.
Pointing out my previous blog, I want to address the issue of the wrong way to do it. It's the wrong way to do it. And how the wrong way to do it relates to the outcome you want. So, what you want from college? If you want a good job, never our goal in any areas, then that's going to dictate what I think about it. See this all the time. Recently, I coached a young man. If I decided to just didn't want to be an engineer, struggling with a good time and not outstanding, and just didn't like engineering. Now he's in another kind of management program he loves, so it's great. And I'm just trying to stress something, and that is that strictly seeing college as a technical school, to learn technical skills, to get a job, is a mistake. 85% of us 10 years after we get out are in career fields that are entirely different than our college training. So if you go to college instead of IT, learn how to learn, which learns, then the college experience is an opportunity to improve the database you have, and you get more information in different areas. But this whole process of really learning how to learn, encountering different issues, different things, but in encountering that and working through that process, you learn to teach yourself things. So we're changing. Teach yourself to do it. Teach yourself what you need to learn. Be in management, be in leadership, be in technology, be in something else. That's what you do. Our son Drew has a degree in studio art, and his primary work, a big part of it, is computer programming. He taught himself. Didn't his background there. Didn't in fact, you take me math in college because he flipped out of it, or whatever they call it, and I said he did. So he got credit in that taking math. Good math, he took college math, and now is doing a lot of high-level programming along with design stuff. Now, my point is that the wrong way to do the major is the job, the right way, which is learning how to learn. And you take that approach, then you have to stop. What is it? Now, let's be smart. They love math, they love engineering, they love business, they love some of these curriculums that really pay off financially. Go for it. That's the way to do it. But because they love it, because they find it intriguing and interesting, they have a knack for it and energy for it. But you know, even as crazy as it is, maybe sociology, maybe it's something else, maybe it's communication, like that one part really focused on. Those things, they really love it, not that they're not at all. It's something they really have passion for and engagement with. That means they're going to study better. If they study better, they're going to learn better. If they learn better, they learn how to learn better. If they learn how to learn, they're going to be ready. In a way, it's obvious, in a way, it's not. Because you have pressure in this world to tell you that your child should not stay on. What will we do with that? And the trick is, what happens in the future? So I'm saying, see, skills are going to learn. Choose a major in course of time, especially based on interest, love, passion. That'll get you through the stuff in the curriculum you don't like. Taking on something that no heart or no interest, just because mommy, daddy, friend, culture told you, it's a recipe for frustration. And 14 minutes eventually.
What I really liked about what he said was quite simply, college is about helping you learn. You're learning how to learn. Yes, this was definitely planned right there. Real quickly, everybody stand up. Okay, you can sit down. I just want you to stand up and stretch, so. Just making sure you weren't sleeping. You can sit down. Okay. All right. Real quickly, before we get into some additional topics, something based on kind of summarize being a major. Here's what I've personally learned. Your major will change. I read a stat that said about 10% of college students don't change their major, which means that 90% of students will change their major at least one time before you graduate. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you change your major. I talk to students all the time that freak out about that. It is okay to change your major. It really is. Don't worry about it. If you find that you don't have a passion for something, don't study it. This is all about you. Choose something that you have an interest in. I loved my major, but I wasn't passionate about my major. I was a management major with a human resources emphasis. I enjoyed it. I picked it because I was interested in the material and I knew there was some job prospects, but I didn't love my major. I didn't love it. I was passionate and loved my minors. I had a history minor and an international business minor. Those were my favorite classes. And I was so interested in them that I'm like, you know what? If I take a couple of them, I will actually get a minor in them. Employers actually do care if you have minors. I've rarely ever interviewed somebody, and I've done several thousand interviews in my career. I'll talk about that here in a minute. I like asking people about their minors. Why? Because it lets me know more about you. If you're really passionate about something and you don't necessarily want to major in it, consider a minor in it. You'd be surprised how often it gets brought up in job interviews. And I went to graduate school for one reason. No one else in my field did. Not a lot of people that are human resources majors get a graduate degree in HR. So I wanted to be different. I knew a field that I was interested in. I got into it. Nobody gets a graduate degree in my field. So I decided to do it. That way I'm different. When I go into an interview, I can speak differently because I've got something nobody else has. And that is going to be a theme that's going to go the rest of the time we're together today. Find things that make you unique. Talk about how you can do that. And I honestly believe my earnings reflect my major. I picked a major that I had an interest in and had career potential. I feel like I make a decent living based on what I do. And again, money is important. Don't let it be your guiding factor. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. Okay. All right. So now that you have your major, you're going to be out in the real world. Now I'm going to help you get a job. Or at least I'm going to try to help you to get a job. Okay? Show of hands, who has a resume? Okay, about half of you, give or take. Those of you who have a resume, when was the last time you updated it? I just heard one person say, never. Okay. For those of you who don't have a resume, have you ever thought about a resume? Or have you been told it's not important right now? So, let's put it this way. This is one of the most important documents you will have in your entire life. Your marriage certificate, pretty important document. Your driver's license, pretty important document. This is one of the most important documents you will have your entire life, and I cannot stress that enough. It is that important. So what does that mean specifically? Okay, here's this quote. The resume is the single biggest factor in determining not only whether or not you get an interview, but also the first and main impression a hiring manager will always have on you. And the genius who came up with this quote, that's my quote. I made that up. But I honestly believe that. This is that important. So let's talk about that specific thing. Here's something I just pulled offline. Okay? This is just, if you just Googled bad resume, or you Googled what's a good resume, or if you Googled what should I and what should I not put on my resume, there is literally an infinite amount of advice out there. And they'll do a lot of things like this. They'll point out, misspelled words, and they'll point out things that should be capitalized, unnecessary commas, etc., etc. I'm not here to tell you about those types of things with your resume. Your career counselor or anybody who works can help you with that. I'm here to let you know about the more practical things about a resume. Specifically, here's, for example, something else I pulled off the internet. So you're getting ready to interview and you need a resume. Well, here's some good tips. Here's some good tips on what you can do with your email, or about how you spell check, and here's some things that you shouldn't do. I'm not going over these in detail because, frankly, you can find this by literally getting on your laptop or your phone and just Googling it. And you can follow that template and it will tell you exactly how to have a good resume. If you do a resume and you spend an hour on your resume, you are doing more than 80% of the people who are trying to get the job that you're going after. But people think, well, just having a resume is enough. It's not. Because as much as you want that job, 800 other people also want that job. So somebody like me who's sitting there reading 800 resumes, how do I pick you out of a crowd? If I said I had $1,000 in my pocket right now, I don't, but let's say I did, and I was going to give that to one person in this room, there you go. How would I decide who I'm going to give it to? I could base it on who has the most need. I could base it on who has the biggest smile. I could base it on who's wearing a No SU shirt today. How would I determine if I just had that money to give? I got a room of 200 people here. I got to figure out how to give this money away somehow. A resume is no different. If I'm going to hire somebody, how do I determine who I'm going to hire? That's how important a resume is. In my career, I've probably looked at over 5,000 resumes. I've seen some really good resumes, and I have seen some very, very bad resumes. I have 3 simple rules when it comes to resumes. And because this is something I'm very passionate about, I want to share these 3 simple rules with you. 1, if it's too wordy, I'm not going to read it. If it's too short, I'm not going to read it. And if it's just the right size, I probably still won't read it. But I might. We've all heard that story of the 3 bears growing up. It was too hot, it was too cold, and it was just the right temperature. You make it a really long resume, I'm not going to read it. I don't have that kind of time. You make it too short, I don't know enough about you, I'm not going to waste my time. But the ones that are just right are the people that sit down, for an hour or two and just try to improve it. And I can assure you, anybody who's been a hiring manager, has done it long enough, can tell you when you've tried to cut corners on a resume. Because if you're cutting corners on a resume now, what's to say you're not going to cut corners whenever I hire you? This is you telling me why you're the best person in the world. That's how important a resume is. It is your one opportunity to tell me how great you are. Second tip, what makes you unique? And if you don't tell me about it, how do I know? I can't tell you how many resumes I've seen in my life that say, I'm Justin, I went to school here, I graduated here, I did an internship here. Okay, so did everybody else in this room. I like resumes that say, during my internship, I actually hired 30 people and they all still work for the company. I like information that says, I did a project and the company president is still doing that project today. I don't care what it is. But what have you done that makes you different than the person sitting next to you? The more you customize your resume, the more you take time to make it about you, you will get more interviews. I will absolutely promise you that. You will get more interviews and you will have a much higher chance of getting the job you want if you spend more time working on this. You absolutely will. And finally, give me a solid reason why I absolutely have to interview you. Because all a resume really is you showing me what a great person you are so that I have to meet you in person. So why do I have to interview you? If I've got 500 resumes, why am I going to take the time for you to come sit in my office and talk to me about why you want this job? What are you going to do? How are you going to sell yourself? And you sell yourself by one way. You make it unique to you. Whatever makes you who you are, I need to know about that. Because the moment you don't, you actually just made my job really easy. So I don't have to take the time to interview you. I want somebody who took the time to put a really good resume together, who makes me want to interview them. Those are the people that get the best jobs. They really are. Like I said, I've seen over 5,000 resumes in my career. And I would say of that 5,000, maybe 800 or 900 ended up getting an interview. So less than 20%, because they made it unique. They did things just slightly different than everybody else does. And that one thing is they made it personal to who they are. So let's talk about the interview, the third topic for today. You ever heard the old saying, you get one shot, you only get one shot to make a good first impression? It's absolutely true. And again, so in the interview, you can Google, what do I say in an interview? What do I not say in an interview? You can get all that great information just by using Google. And that's all great. The one question I probably get more asked than anything is, what do I wear in an interview? I don't know what to wear. So I'm going to make it real simple for you. There is one word that should always come to mind when you're selecting what to wear for an interview. One word. No matter where you're interviewing, one word should come to mind. Conservative. I don't mean in the political sense, conservative, liberal. I don't mean it in that sense. I mean it in, we'll just say dull. So it sounds like I'm almost contradicting myself when I say you need to make your resume stand out. So why wouldn't you make your appearance stand out? Well, let's talk about that. So gentlemen, I'll start with you. That's what you should look like. Is it boring? Yes. Is it dull? Yes. Is it what we see all the time on TV or what? Any type of dullness you can think of is true here. This is a very dull look. But I can assure you, these are the people that get hired. They have a coat. They have a tie. They have a white shirt. Now again, am I telling you this is the only thing you can wear? Of course not. This is simply just in my experience. And here's why dress is so important. Before I get to that, ladies, is it boring? Yes. Dull? Yes. Ladies, you actually have an advantage because this is also acceptable. So ladies, you have double the chances of men because you get 2 times the opportunity. Here's what I'm saying. Whenever you are sitting across in an interview, that interviewer is judging you. And he or she has to judge you because they have to determine if you're the person they're going to hire or not. What you don't want is for how you look and how you dress to be the distraction. I've actually done an interview where the person, it was for an accounting position, okay? Mid-level accountant. The gentleman came in with an orange jacket, a pink tie, a tie-dye dress shirt, and he had blue hair. And I said, wow, that's very colorful. I said, just out of curiosity, why'd you decide that? And it was one of my favorite answers. He goes, because I knew if I did this, you'd remember me. And you know what? He's right. I'm telling every one of you. Did he get the job? No. Now, there were more qualified individuals for the position. The person I hired for that specific job looked like that. Because I wasn't distracted. And when I'm not distracted, I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm listening to who you are. I'm listening to what you can do for my company. I'm not thinking in the back of my mind, wow, that's some bright hair. Wow, that's a bright jacket. Because when I'm doing that, I'm not listening to what you're saying. And if you want the job, you have to sell me based on your words and who you are. So again, I'm not saying that this is the only way you can look, but I can assure you, be conservative. Because if you are, then I'm not going to remember what you wore. I don't want to remember what you wore. I want to remember you for who you are and what you said, not because of what you look like. Again, people that get the jobs are the ones who sell themselves on what makes them unique without being distracting. So my advice is always, when you go to an interview, be boring in your dress. Because I've never heard anybody in my professional career, I have never heard a single person who got the job based on how they looked. Not one. I could tell you countless stories of people who didn't get the job because of what they wore. You want to be in that first group. You want to be in those who are getting the job based on you, not how you look. Very important. Again, here's something I just pulled offline. Here's some general ideas. When you're trying to figure out what you should and shouldn't say in an interview, I pull things like this because I encourage you to do this. There's a lot of really good information online about how you put a resume together, about what you should and shouldn't do in an interview. It's all good advice, and you really should follow it. And I can assure you, as many interviews as I've done, I can tell when somebody has read these types of things because they kind of know the rules. You hate to say interview has rules to it, but it kind of does. And if you don't follow some of those rules, it becomes distracting, and then you're much less likely to get the position. Okay? So, in my career, I've probably conducted over 1,500 interviews. I've estimated about 1,500 interviews, give or take. So my 3 simple rules, just like I had for a resume, I have 3 very simple rules on an interview. Rule number 1, never underestimate the power of smiling. Not that creepy smile. A simple smile. I'm pretty sure of everybody I've ever hired, I've never hired a single person who didn't smile and didn't smile throughout the interview. Because if I interview 30 people and I can give the job to one person, I remember the people that smiled. The people that just sat there and just grumbled and didn't show any emotion, those individuals don't get the job. I want somebody who's happy to be there. I mean, that's why I put this as my number one. Do not underestimate the power of smiling. It really does make a difference. It really does. Second, the more confident you are, the more likely I am to be intrigued by you and more likely to hire you. Show me your confidence. Show me why this is your job. Show me why you are the person who should get this job. Those are the people I want to hire. My favorite response to this question is, I usually don't ask the question, why should I hire you? I think it's kind of a loaded question. But I did ask that one time, and this is what the person said, and I quote, because my mom would be really happy if you did. I'm like, well, that's exactly what I want. I want your mom to be happy. So I said, okay, well, that'd be great if your mom was happy, but what about you? And he responded, well, if mom's happy, I'm happy. I said, okay. But what is happiness to? Why are you really here? And he said, and I quote, I just want to have some money. I'm actually kind of glad that interview happened. Because what that taught me as an interviewer is everybody is scared. Everybody has a unique reason for being in that interview. But the person I ended up hiring for that position sat down and said, I want this position. I really do. And here's why I want that position. You know what that person did? Something that nobody else did. They smiled a lot and they said, I want this position. Every interview that I've ever been on, I have said that sentence, I want this position. And I can assure you, if you say that word, those words, you will increase your chances of getting hired. Because I know you're here for a reason, not just because, it's something I found in the newspaper, I'm going to apply for it. Tell me that you want the job. I am much more likely to hire you if you tell me that. Okay? The more you thank me, the more I know you will be successful. I've never hired anybody who didn't say thank you at least 3 or 4 times during the interview. Thank you for interviewing me. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just like the power of smile, the power of the words thank you goes a long way. Of those 1,500 interviews I've done, less than half the people said thank you at any point during the interview. Less than half. So I want each one of you to be in that other half that says, thank you for taking the time to interview me. Because you know what? I remember you then. I remember you because you said thank you. Okay, 2 more tips. If you do your homework, I will know it and you're more likely to be at the top of my list. So my first job out of college was a company called Pinnacle Entertainment. It was a casino company. They had casinos throughout the country. I interviewed this one individual. He came in. I said, well, tell me what you know about Pinnacle Entertainment. And he goes, oh, Pinnacle's great. You guys are doing amazing things in the oil and gas industry, and I know you have refineries and this, that, and the other. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, this is Pinnacle Entertainment. He goes, oh, I thought you were Pinnacle Construction and Gas. There's a lot of companies out there called Pinnacle. Well, I can assure you that person didn't get the job. They didn't even know what they were there for. They didn't even know the company. It was a little embarrassing for them, like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was the case. When you're interviewing, this is a little trick. Whatever company you're interviewing, whatever job it is, find 2 things to tell me about my company. So if I was interviewing each one of you for a job at OSU, tell me 2 things about OSU that you found out. You Googled OSU and you found out 2 things. If you can tell me those 2 things, I know you at least somewhat care about being there. and therefore you intrigue me, and I want to learn more about you. Okay? The worst thing that you can do when you're interviewing is not know anything about the company or the job that you're there for. Because I can assure you, any hiring manager will be able to tell instantly whether or not you did your homework or not. And if you didn't do your homework, you're not going to get hired. So just tell me something about my company, something that I know that you did your homework. Once you do that, you're in the game. You're going to have a chance to get hired. Okay? And if you don't send a thank you card, I may hold it against you. Trust me, I think texting is a wonderful thing. I think email is a wonderful thing. Facebook, social media are wonderful things. I'm a big fan of them, continue to do so. When was the last time any of you wrote a handwritten thank you note? So, good, I'm seeing some hands, I like that. I saw a lot of no hands too. This is the one time that I would tell you that a handwritten note matters. If somebody takes the time to interview you, I promise you, I will not guarantee you that you will get the job. But I will tell you one thing. When you send a handwritten, don't email them, because emails get deleted quickly. If you send a handwritten thank you letter, I have to open it. I have to read it. I will remember you if you did it. And more often than not, this is the honest truth, when I'm trying to figure out who to hire, I may interview 3 or 4 people that all have the same qualifications, who I really liked, who smiled, who said thank you a lot, are all in the running to get hired, but they're all kind of the same. How do I pick? Well, I guarantee you, if somebody sent me a thank you letter, that puts them in the top spot. Because it shows you're a good person, and it shows you care. And that's what I want. I want somebody who took time to actually find an actual piece of paper and write thank you. It doesn't need to be long. It can be one sentence. Thank you for interviewing me on this date. Done. Doesn't have to be anything spectacular. It's the process of doing it. In the working world, these things are what drive decisions. So you send me a thank you letter, you just vaulted yourself to the top of my list. It's that important. Okay. All right, last topic of the day. It's basically just stuff I like. Some additional things that I think can help you during your college time and your professional career. And it's really 5 key points. Working in college, clubs, fraternities, creating references, PowerPoint presentations, and what I call the Forrest Gump philosophy. Okay? Talk about each one of them real quick. First off, we'll start with this. Working in college and internships. It only really matters if you don't do it. And here's what I mean by that. When all of you are trying to get your first big job out of college, when you graduate, a lot of people join clubs. A lot of people have part-time jobs in college. That's all well and good. Where it matters is if you don't do anything. And those are the individuals who don't get hired. All I want to see is that, did you work? Are you working an unpaid something to experience? Are you committed to something? Just do something. If you're a student athlete, you're doing something. If you're in the finance club, you're doing something. If you work part-time at Starbucks, you're doing something. Just do something that you can put on your resume. Give me something to talk to you about. These things, because I get a lot of people to say, well, does it matter if I do an internship? Does it matter if I work instead? Does it matter if I join these clubs? And I say it all matters. Do whatever you want and do whatever you're passionate about in this sense. It only matters if you do nothing. So work during the summers if you can. If you're going to school, join a club. If you don't have time to join a club or work, do something that you can put on your resume. Because ultimately, that's what I want to know about. Okay? Numbers matter and connections matter. Just tell me what you've done. And what I mean by numbers matter is Did you work for more than 7 days? Numbers matter to the extent that, did you actually put a little bit of effort into? Did you just join the philosophy club a day ago so it's something you could put on your resume? Have some time in these things. Those types of numbers do matter, and people do notice them. And connections matter. So if you decide you want to be in the finance club, well, what are you going to do in the finance club? Or if you work at Starbucks, what do you do at Starbucks? That's the type of things I want to know about. Those are the types of things that interest me, and those are the types of things that help you get hired. Okay. So I get a lot of things about, well, what clubs matter? Am I in a leadership in my fraternity or my sorority? Does that matter? Again, they most matter when you don't have them. I love to interview students and hire students who are in clubs and in fraternities and student groups and student council, because it shows you have an interest in something. This is where your passion is. If you have always wanted to be in a fraternity or sorority, do it and do it well. If you play a sport, give it your all. Just do something. So I get a lot of questions about how much should I get involved? Here's what I always say. 1 to 2 is good, 3 to 4 is perfect, 5 or more can be devastating. So when you're trying to build that initial resume and you're trying to get as much out of college as you can, I say if you can be in 3 to 4 things, that's perfect. You work a part-time job, you're in a fraternity, and you are in some club. That's 3 things right there. That's perfect. If you just do one thing, and if you do something really and have like a big, strong presence, like let's say you just do a fraternity, but you're the president of your fraternity, then you're taking a massive leadership role. That's great. What you don't want to do is get involved in 18 different things, and then I think a lot of hiring managers think you're doing it just to build your resume. That you're just trying to add fluff to your resume. So I always recommend pick 3 to 4, 5 things that really interest you. Part-time job, fraternity, sorority, club, volunteer somewhere, do something. Put those 3 to 4 things on your resume, because once you do that, now I know who you are. Now I can have a conversation with you. Now I know how you're going to help me be successful. So just do something, get involved. If you can, serve in a leadership role. So if you're in a fraternity, see if you can be the treasurer or the president of your fraternity. If you're in a sport, try to be a captain. Take on some leadership role, because those that take on leadership roles are the ones who ultimately get the experience that I'm looking for. Because you've had to make decisions. You've really had to engage people. That's what I'm interested in. So if you can, do it in a leadership role. I always tell people be very cautious of overly what I call passionate groups. Okay? And what I mean by that is, for example, if you're really into politics, let's say you're really, you're the president of the college Republicans, or you're the president of the college Democrats, or, those types of groups. If you want to join them, by all means, you should. You should do whatever you want to do. But always be in the real world. If you're conservative, there could be liberals who don't like you. If you're liberal, there could be conservatives who judge you for that. So I'm not saying you shouldn't join these groups. You absolutely should. But just be very careful to know that when you get asked about these things, to make sure you talk about the leadership stuff that you've done, and to stay away from trying to indoctrinate people into your way of thinking, because nobody wants to be preached to. So again, if there's a religious group that if you're really into your church or whatever, do that, absolutely. Just be real careful when you put stuff like that on your resume to make sure you're not doing it to try to convince people of your own views, plain and simple. Okay? Have fun. This is college. Have fun. Join groups that you're passionate about, because especially when I'm interviewing college students for jobs, I like asking them what groups they've been involved in. I like to hear from college students about what you've done, because most college students don't do anything. But you all are going to be different. You're all going to be different. Okay? Creating professional references. Yes, you need references. Do companies call your references? Yes, they do. I called 4 references literally yesterday. You need to have references, people who can speak to who you are as a person. And my tip for this is quite simple. No friends, no family. I don't want to talk to your mom. I don't want to talk to your best friend. Because if your mom or your best friend doesn't have good things to say about you, I kind of wonder. Anybody else is acceptable. No friends, no family. Your boss at your part-time job. Your pastor at your church. The head of an organization you volunteered with last year. Any of that's fine. 2 references. You should all have 2 people who, if I came up to each one of you and said, hey, I want somebody to tell me about you, can you give me 2 people that are not your friends or family who can tell me all there is to know about you? Because yes, companies, organizations, they do call references. They call them every single day. I've called them literally for 20 years. They do matter. So just no friends, no family, because again, they're naturally biased. I want somebody who's going to give me an honest reflection of you, unbiased. Okay. Here's mine. So when you're providing your references, these are just 3 people that used to be my former bosses. Their name, their title, where they work, their phone number, and their email address. It can be something this simple. This took me literally about 1.5 minutes to write down. You'd be surprised how often I get asked about my references. So do the same thing. Their name, their phone number, their email address, what they do and where they work. You have this, you're doing more than 90% of students. 90% of students do not have at least 2 references that are not friends or family. So be different. Be one of those who have a reference. Okay. Got out of line a little bit. Something I want to show you real quick. I call this death by PowerPoint. Okay. Anybody ever heard of Don McMillan by any chance? And some of you may have actually seen this presentation before. When you're in college, you will use PowerPoint a lot. Okay? When in my 3 degree programs, I did PowerPoint all the time. When you get in the working world, you're going to use PowerPoint a lot. Okay? PowerPoint can be a wonderful thing. I'm using it right here, but it can be overly distracting. So the kind of more practical advice I can give you, I'm going to let Don McMillan talk about a few tips for you on PowerPoint. It's about a 9-minute video. It's somewhat humorous, but again, PowerPoint can really make or break you in a lot of different ways, especially in your schoolwork. So I hope you enjoyed this little quick presentation from Don. Give us just 1 second. Is it coming? Is it not pulling up? There we go. No worries. We got it. Okay. We'll get it. How do we get that to? Click off. Well. Oh. Okay. Here we go.
Per day. Look at that, 23 million per day in 2054 and 2059 million. 3 million per day next year. You see that going on? Anyway, I realize that PowerPoint actually crosses over each other. So this is the thing I think people like that conversation. Don't do these things. This is the things that people use drive me nuts. The only way to show them not to use is to show them. So the biggest question is about non-power. Number one, people tend to every word they're going to say on the front. All this one is to be memorized. All this is like category. Who's choice is where you read about your slide. Second most common, font size. Or size matters too small, and that's not good for you. On the other hand, too big and really hard. Just look at it. Don't have a font moving. Keep your text stationary. There's nothing more annoying than text that's blinking, don't have it blinking, don't have it spinning, don't have stuff flying around the screen. You drive people easy, you just roll it out. Now, we're going to talk about fonts. People are really into fonts. Here's the best joke that I know. Yeah. Comic Sans and Odessa always were. And that's one of their first training parties. Sorry, we don't serve that. That really is one thing. The font you choose, be very careful. The font you send a message about who you are first, as a long font. Be thankful. Every clever personality will say another little message. If you use Comic Sans, it means you get it wrong. And if you use Type 1, it means you lay that back and that's you always use it wrong. If you choose Georgia, you can speak with Southern accents. If you choose Arrow, it means you have a lower rate. If you choose Old English, it means you're doing all there. We got 2 more. That means you're handing over. That's a script. That's a script. Black Adam means you're not being very good. And if you like Wiggins, it means you're an urban U.S. Now, if you type all small letters, you can do that. All small letters means you're talking unnecessary. If you type all capital letters, that means that you yell a lot. There. If you type a small letter followed by capital letters, it means you're capitalizing someone. Okay, when that happens, you can go off the line with oh, God! And finally, the mix of capital letters and small letters, it means this is the range of open where it happens. There we go. The fourth one, avoid excessive bullet points, only bullet key points, too many bullet points, and your key messages will not stand out. In fact, the term bullet point comes from people firing guns at going possession. This slide was a crash PowerPoint. There's a max how many bullets points you have. The other thing you have is people love having these stuff doing in and out. It's seasick. Turns out you're a visual learner. Your effectiveness boring, the active and ineffective, the double stack region, the useful region over there, the AD only region there over there. The useful region, the two using the double triangle, the triangle, the city square, the Disney pentagon, and everything else is just moving to what's called social solution. This one slide away to bring out this thing. Now, what we see here today, and I'm telling you, I hear it more and more in your conversations, what I call SAOD, or severe acronym overload disorder. Have you heard people talk recently? Come on, no words going through. Yeah, I am CFO at ROI, CRM, and RFP. And it turns out EPS is really SOL, so everything from ASAP. And it's kind of wow, it's all your conversation. And then, I chose that acronym, it's my real time acronym, it's pretty much about that. I don't know why you do that, you can pretty much make your own more whatever. There's just that makes sense, but that's not right. Here's the acronym letters, you see the eyes, and you can add the most common letters that you can add. Here's a pie chart letters, and here's I have no idea to use that for you can never go like a PowerPoint, pretty well. Here's a line on the line restaurant show. Here's a bar chart. Here's down here's a real bar chart. Here's a cane bar chart. Here's a salad bar chart. Tomatoes, sprouts, spinach, and different calories. Here's a sushi bar chart. This is probably know this. Depends on there's a lot of detail on that. Here's a bar chart of bars. This is versus age. So I like most people don't take time to do this, but you can see when I was 17, I had Face ID, so it was complicated when I was 19, I already dropped that. I spent way too long making these charts. When I was 21, I don't remember the estimated year to be about 342. Kind of going down the year, and then through a lot of 40, a lot of 50, and then retired a very constant. Here's the spreadsheet. That's the chart. So here's the spreadsheet spread, butter, 119 minutes, not butter. And it's going to be with the Patriots plus 5 results. Very impossible spreadsheet. Here's an order chart, and order chart, sales marketing order chart. Here's your order chart, and you should have those. And then this is my actual kind of order chart. Mainly, it's important. Steve Arcat runs our factory. We have a cat, you know, that is true. Hang out with those things. I just moved there so you can clearly, my wife over here, Steve, I report my wife, and the local over. That's my entire region of building there. Back to the survey. Here's a chart chart. Here's a pie for dessert, lemon, coffee, cherry, pecan, apple. Here's a peach pie chart. Here's a pot pie chart. There's a better pot pie chart. Here's a pot for 2005 winners out there. That's 3.4, 3.4, 3.4, and the pie itself. Here's a pie chart. Why we have a big chart? There's a big chart. There's a early big chart. There's a one big chart. There's one big chart. Outside big chart, and then here's that outside big chart. All right. Any questions?
You can go ahead and turn off, Rachel. Again, I always like to show that video because, again, it's humorous, but more importantly, it gives you an idea of kind of how crazy PowerPoint can be sometimes, and more importantly, kind of just give you some general thoughts that you want to make your presentation somewhat entertaining, but they can go off a little bit of a tangent. So one last point that I want to make, and then we'll be done. I accidentally clicked off my PowerPoint, but let's go ahead. It's the last point I want to talk about is what I called on my list the Forrest Gump philosophy. Thank you, Rachel. So, who in here has seen Forrest Gump? Okay. My favorite movie of all time. So, actually, a little bit further up. Okay. I think it's slide 30. We'll get there. Here. So, while Rachel's working on that, again, my favorite movie of all time. And the reason why it's my favorite movie of all time, because I'm a big history buff, and I've always enjoyed kind of just seeing what Forrest goes through throughout the movie. He does all these amazing things in his life, okay? There we go. Thank you, Rachel. Here we go. So, what did Forrest Gump accomplish? Okay? If we're talking about success, we're talking about ways you can make a difference. Let's think about the things he did. He taught Elvis Presley his famous dance moves early in the movie. He was an All-American football player at Alabama, and he met President Kennedy. He joins the Army, he saves lives, he's awarded the Medal of Honor, meets another president. Okay? He's a world-class ping pong champion, meets another president. Meets 3 presidents. He meets John Lennon and inspires the lyrics to Lennon's favorite song, Imagine. He survives Hurricane Carmen and co-founds the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. Becomes one of the first investors in Apple Computer. Runs across the country for over 2 years, helps find the smiley face t-shirt. Forrest does all these amazing things throughout the movie. Inspires history. But if you asked Forrest, he would give it all up for his one love, Jenny. Everybody's doing Jenny. The Jenny, yeah, me too. Point is, Forrest would give up everything for what was most important to him, which was his love. And to me, that is the most important thing that you should focus on. With all the stuff about worrying about your major and about your first job and about doing everything that you want to be successful, don't forget about the things that make you who you are. And most importantly, don't forget about focus on the important things in life, because only you determine who those things are. I see time and time again with what I do for a living that people are so worried about getting the right major, so focused on getting the next promotion, so worried about everything, they lose sight of the things that are most important to them. So whatever those things, whether it's your friends or your family, your religion, whatever it is that's important to you, don't ever lose focus about that. Okay? I want to thank you all so very much for letting me come here today. You really were an amazing crowd. So here's my contact information if you ever have any questions, want me to look at your resume, want me to give you any career advice, please contact me. I'm always happy to do so. Thank you all very much.